I recently did a live interview on my Twitch channel with Pantheon Rise of the Fallen's creative director, Joppa Perkins, about limited action sets, or limited hotbars, and how they affect the combat system. And this is such a deep and important topic that it quickly turned into an hour-and-a-half long discussion. That's way longer than any of the videos I've done for YouTube, so right now, I'm going to do something that I've actually never done before and summarize my own video for you.
This is BazgrimTV. Learn, laugh, level up.
If you know me, you know that my main goal here is to provide you with information about Pantheon in a way that is quick and easy to understand. I'm not a developer, I just want to be part of a community that can have well-informed discussions about the game. But when I do have an opportunity to interview a developer, I'm of course going to try to get as much information out of them as I possibly can. Now, if you're one of the many people who just doesn't have time to sit down and watch a 90-minute interview, then this one is for you. But if you do like those deeper dives and are particularly interested in limited action sets in Pantheon, then please go watch the full interview now if you haven't already. I'll provide a link in the upper right-hand corner and in the description, because it's a very comprehensive interview, and Joppa has some amazing answers to some difficult questions from the community. Regardless, if you want more Pantheon coverage, whether it be quick summaries or in-depth interviews, hit the subscribe button now because I've got it all right here. So first of all, for those who may not be familiar, let's do a quick review of what limited action sets even are. A limited action set means that you won't be able to have an unlimited amount of ability hotbars on your screen. So you will reach a point where you won't have access to all of the abilities in your arsenal at all times. In Pantheon, your ability bar will look like this: 8 action abilities on the bottom row and 6 utility abilities on the top row for a total of 14 abilities. Essentially, an action ability is any ability that directly affects an NPC's hate toward you, and utility abilities are everything else. And once you've decided what abilities you want on your bar for a particular situation, you'll be able to save that as a set. So, for example, you could make a custom set of abilities to be most effective toward casters, another set that is best against undead, etc. And anytime you're out of combat, you can switch between these loadouts with a click of a button. Although, skilled players will realize that you don't necessarily need to wait for the whole fight to be over to do this.
The loadout things, you know, we think about switching abilities in combat, or that has a very clunky feel to it most of the time when you're, you know, trying to sit down and forget this thing and then open your book and find the ability and drag it in and do all that stuff. Obviously that's not going to be the case in Pantheon because of the way the mechanics work. But when you are able to and you need to switch loadouts, like the example I gave earlier with the rogue, you know, using flash bomb, you know, I envision things like the rogue being able to use flash bomb, get out of combat, switch to his Shadowfall loadout, use a grapple hook to kind of get himself nearly instantly up onto a wall face above the target, and then use Shadowfall right on top of it. That's a beautiful moment where the rogue is using his abilities within the limited action set to open up an opportunity for them to, and then especially with Shadowfall being as devastating as it's going to be because of its positional and other, you know, requirements. I mean, that's going to feel amazing to pull something like that off, and it's still possible to do that within this system. And you want to talk about, again, skill play and being able to see, you know, players pull things like that off. It's a big deal, and so I think there's just a lot of really good things to look forward to and seeing all this play out.
In addition to that limited ability hotbar, however, you will have multiple hotbars for things like clickies, text macros, trade skills, etc. And on top of that, you'll have another separate hotbar specifically for consumables like potions, food, etc. And now would probably be a good time to mention that Joppa gave us an update on how consumables will actually work.
If you have a potion, let's say with a 60-minute duration, then as soon as you activate that potion, that's going to start counting down from 60 minutes. And if you switch to a different loadout with a new potion equipped, then that previous potion is going to go back into your inventory. And if you had it active for 13 minutes, it would say 47 minutes left. So you could almost think of it like you can see like the liquid inside of it slowly draining as it stays active. Again, that's considering more of a potion or a elixir or consumable that has a long-term effect. If it's if it's an instant effect, like a heal, like I have a potion equipped that restores 200 points of health instantly, then that's it. You would click that, it would consume it, and then that slot would be empty again for the next time you can, be out of combat and put something like that back in.
So now that we know what the UI is like, we can begin to dig deeper into why the developers have decided to go this route. And before we get too deep into this though, I want to address a concern right off the bat that I saw fairly frequently among the community, which I had my doubts about to say the least, but nevertheless, I wanted to get a definitive answer. Does it have anything to do with making the game easier to port to consoles?
No. Not in the slightest.
Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we should be asking how restricted will actually be from a gameplay perspective. Because knowing that there's 14 ability slots doesn't really do you any good if you don't know the context. In other words, how many total abilities will you have in your arsenal at max level, for example?
I mean, in terms of like total unique abilities, and I would not include in this number things like like epic abilities that are rare and difficult to come by. But when we're thinking more about like the core, distinct abilities, you're looking on average between 20 and 30 different abilities per class in terms of that core distinct type. And then additional, when we think about epic abilities and some of those types of things, that would be added on top of that number. But that's what we're looking at is about somewhere between 20 and 30 unique ability types between each class.
So when you look at it that way, it doesn't really seem quite as restrictive. Even at max level, you'll still have roughly 50% of your entire arsenal available to you at any given time. Although that of course then begs the question, what about everything leading up to max level? How long until you have more abilities than slots and you have to start choosing?
You've got these things you're looking forward to as a class. I'm a warrior, and I know, by the time I'm level 20, 25, 30 in that range, I've got, a good majority of my banners. I've got, all of my core, tanking type abilities. I've got a few of the, more, secondary type things. I've gotten a formation or two. Like I've got a good sampling of my full kit. And by the time you hit that range, and that's about when you're going to start, feeling the need to make some decisions about, what you have out and what you have available. And again, the idea there is to leave enough headroom in the leveling process to where once you hit that point, then you're growing more and more comfortable, more and more conditioned to the process of making those decisions of what you have in your loadout as you approach level 50, and where the amount of abilities you have reaches its full, and the weight of those decisions is weightier by that point. So it's very much designed to be a curve that rewards you for really understanding your class and gaining a deeper and deeper understanding of the world and things like that.
So hopefully by now this is all starting to make a little bit more sense. But there is one more significant thing that we'll need to consider, and this was probably one of the biggest pieces of new information that we got out of the interview.
Buffs are broken up into kind of two categories. We think of them in two categories. The first one is your very short duration, or what we would call like steroid type buffs, which are going to be very potent, very, very potent and very short duration. So this could be anything from, a 5-second duration all the way to, probably a 5-minute duration, something like that. Anything beyond that 5-minute duration would put it into the second category, the long duration buffs. And one of the things that we're doing is actually moving away from buffs, long duration buffs having an actual duration. And what that means is when you have a long duration buff available to you on your loadout, once you activate that, it will stay active indefinitely on you, on your group, as long as you have it on your bar, as long as it's a part of your loadout.
Interesting.
If you change, loadouts, if you move that buff off your bar, then that effect also will go away. But as long as that buff is on your bar, then you activate it and you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's going to stay on your group at all times. Again, the exception being the very short duration buffs, and then those will be more like, the cooldowns that you'll blow when you need to.
Now, you may be wondering what that means for buffing people outside of your group, and that's an important question, and if you're concerned about that, I'm just going to have to direct you to the full interview, because Joppa goes into depth about how that will work. Suffice to say that drive-by buffing will still be possible, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep this video focused on the limited action sets specifically. So anyway, indefinite durations on buffs means that you won't be able to cast all your long duration buffs and then just dump them off your hotbar to replace them with your in-combat abilities. If you want to have a buff active, it will have to be taking up space on your hotbar. This makes each slot on your ability bar even more significant, which plays into the strategy of having to decide what's most important to have on your hotbar. That word strategy comes up often when talking about combat in Pantheon, and that's where we get to the core meaning behind these decisions.
Really neat thing about it, and the thing that I think people are going to resonate with more and more as they see things in action, is the kind of creativity and the kind of gameplay that issues from when you find yourself in that now situation. How do I deal with this particular thing that's coming my way that maybe I didn't anticipate? Or, when you get an ad, or you're all of a sudden in a more unlimited kind of action bar way. We'll just say UAS for sake of simplicity. When you have every ability that you have in your arsenal on a bar and available to you, then there's really not a whole lot of creativity in how you approach a situation, because you have more of a one-to-one answer. When the content presents a question, you have the answer. Whereas when you don't have that one-to-one answer available to you, the kind of creativity that it causes to happen in terms of what you do and how you lean on other people and ways that you think about ability synergies and ways to get an effect in a roundabout way that because you don't have a direct answer for. Those are the kind of things that start to add some of those ancillary layers to challenge that and strategy that we're really excited about. So only if you imagine yourself as a solo player needing a one-to-one answer for every potential question that an NPC can throw at you, are you going to toe a hard line and say it's going to be impossible to have something unexpected happen and be able to pull it out victoriously, because that's forgetting one of the biggest aspects of Pantheon, which is this is a group-centric game. If you don't have the answer to a specific question the encounter throws at you, then surely someone in your group does. And if they don't, then at what point do we stop remembering that death happens? There may be certain moments where an encounter just throws something so crazy and unexpected, and every single person in your party literally does not have a way to counter it, and you can't creatively come up with some kind of secondary or tertiary way to make something happen, or buy yourself enough time to do this or that, or have a rogue use flash bomb, get out of combat, change loadout. Same with a summoner, same with a monk, classes that have the ability to do that and switch. I mean, if you cannot think through a way to overcome that, then you might die, and that's
probably
okay.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
That cooperation aspect of working with your group members to overcome obstacles is a big part of the design philosophy of Pantheon. 4 out of the 15 game tenets reference depending on your group mates in combat. And by limiting ability sets, that also allows multiple players of the same class in a group to supplement each other and contribute more meaningfully.
What a limited action set like what we're doing, how that differentiates itself even further is, number one, it is a different form of constraining the character, which allows us to, design-wise, actually gives us more freedom to make abilities more potent, to make the button press feel that much more significant, because it's understood that you are making a very significant decision to put this ability in your loadout versus these other ones that you could use. It also immediately opens the door to classes being multiple of the same classes being more viable at the same time. And yes, granted, you could argue, well, in the unlimited action set, you could do the same thing. If I wanted to bring 3 druids, what would keep me from bringing 3 druids? Nothing would keep you from bringing 3 druids, but it's the feeling of being one of those druids and knowing that because of this limited action set constraint, what I'm bringing to the table is markedly and significantly and meaningfully different from this druid, and therefore the role that I play is markedly and meaningfully significantly different from this druid. That's a big deal. That really matters. And so I think that's another win that this allows for.
So those are what I would consider the highlights from the interview, or at least the ones that I could fit into this video. Hopefully you learned something from it, but if you do still have any questions or concerns about LES, then go ahead and watch the full interview now, because chances are we already answered it. Either way, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.